World. What's up? Welcome to Shelf-a-saurus, the podcast that unites two people who have a lot of love for solo games, who are creating content for many people, but specifically for the solo community. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by. I represent Shelf Stories on YouTube and also the One Stop Co-op Shop podcast. So if you're listening on either of those things, please, thank you so much. Go ahead and hit subscribe on my channel, Shelf Stories. And also, if you're not subscribed already, subscribe to One Stop Co-op Shop podcast and YouTube channel. But we are not doing that today. We are doing Shelf-a-saurus today. And the reason I call it that is because I have one half of the Solosaurus podcast, the new rebooted Solosaurus podcast. You may know him from his frequent posts. I'm saying a lot of them on the Solo Board Gamers Guild and BG41 and all different Facebook groups. He is Martin Gonzalvez. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm very honored to be gracing your show and just to meet you.
Yeah, man. We see each other's posts, we like each other's stuff and everything. So, I love this. This is my anti-COVID, my screw you COVID response. I'm just going to invite a whole bunch of people, call them, cold message them to be like, you know what, be on my show.
I think that's great. I think we're all kind of coping with the whole new reality, right, in our own way. And like you mentioned earlier about how I post a lot. It's no secret. If you're somebody on Solo Board Gamers, primarily SBG, but also Board Game Spotlight, I tend to post there quite a bit. And I try to give some love to, I'm aware of like 6 or 7 solo Facebook groups actually, and I try to spread some love, but SBG is my first and foremost, and I keep coming back to it. And
first one.
I just got to give a shout out to the admin team over there. They work so hard behind the scenes. And
we're talking Sean and Sydney Bristol.
Yeah.
Sean being the one who first started out. He's been on my show too.
Awesome.
And Sydney's been on a couple times. And Thomas
Daniel,
Colbert, I've reached out to him. Maybe I'll get Thomas on there at some point. Jimmy Howard is also involved. He's been on my show a bunch of times. We're a big happy family over here, and everybody's welcome on the show.
That is awesome. Yeah, no, it's just, but like to finish that thought, right? Like the increase in posting just came about, as a result of like just being stuck at home and having to work from home and all this stuff. And I apologize if now you can hear puppies crying in the background. We have 4 dogs, and they can't make up their minds. Do you want to be in the office? Cool, I got to close my door. And then 2 minutes later, they're like, they want to leave. And then 2 minutes later, they'll be scratching at my door. So right now, I'm sorry I have to get up and open the door.
Yeah, sure. Oh, no, we're live. I'm not editing this thing. You think I edit these things? No way. We keep it on, man.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also want to say that, as you mentioned, I am only one half of the Solosaurus podcast. The other half, Michael Eckenfels, could not be with us because he's working. I tried to make this as late as possible, y'all. It's like 10 after 10 in the evening for me. I know.
Like, man, sir.
You're in the East Coast, and I'm in California. It's only like 7:12 in the evening for me. So thank you for staying up late.
Well, there's always editing. So you're actually in between editing. Like I started a clip, and then it's like, oh, I got to call Martin, and then I'm going to pick it up afterwards. It's the only time I get to edit as a parent. So I put my kids to bed, and then I come down to the basement.
Oh, my gosh. How many kids do you have?
What's that?
How many kids do you have, and how old are they?
I have 2 children. They are 5 and 2, so they are a little bit too young for games. Although our games, so to speak. My kid, she likes Outfox. That is where she's graduated to at this point.
Nice.
So she doesn't quite play. Like she doesn't really know what it means to eliminate like a suspect or anything. But she's getting there. And at some point, I'm going to put some Uno cards in her hand, and we'll see how it goes from there.
That's awesome. That's super exciting, man.
You got kids?
Yeah, I got four kids too. I had to, but you
could not pay me. You have to go into the 8 figures to get me past 2 kids.
Right? I know, right? What were we thinking? But they're mostly older now. Our oldest is like 28, and then we've got a 24-year-old, 22-year-old. And so the younger 2, they still live with us, and they game every so often. In fact, we just had a pretty exciting game of Black Orchestra with my daughter last night, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And
So speaking of that,
yeah.
we're going to do a little bit of get to know you stuff just to kind of let the people know what we're going to do. We'll do some get to know you stuff. We're going to do like just combine podcast stuff, but then eventually I think this would be a great opportunity to get into that game, because I do like that game as well. And we can kind of break down what you like about it and all that kind of stuff. I imagine you're going to record a podcast anyway, but I'm ninja-ing that thing. We're going to take that off of your plate.
That's totally fine. We can absolutely talk about that game. I love that game.
Absolutely. So let's get to some of the get to know you stuff first. So you are in California. You are recently on the Solosaurus podcast, because I remember when I first wanted, because I was subscribed to Solosaurus the entire time, and I wanted Brandon and Carter on the show, but it just never happened. Just life. And then I'm like, oh, let me go reach out to Brandon and Carter again. Oh, wait, who is this guy?
Yep.
Is he the poster? Is he the guy that posts all the time? When did that happen?
It's a funny story, right? It's not like Brandon. I mean, I was a fan of the show and I was listening to them, and then Brandon just kind of messaged me on Facebook Messenger out of the blue, and he goes, "Hey, I know, we're kind of like Facebook acquaintances, but we're not like, friends in real life or anything like that." But he's like, basically, he said a long, earnest post saying that his life situation and Carter's life situations are changing, and they've got this, show, and it's built up a listenership, and they're part of the Dice Tower network and all this stuff, and it would be a shame to just let it all, kind of fade away. And so he's like, when he was thinking about, who would he want to ask to be able to take it on or keep it going, he said my name was the first that popped into his head for the same reason that we're talking now, because I tend to be very, very active on SBG. So that's kind of how it went down.
It's not just like that you post, like you ask good questions. Like you set up like, okay, if there's one game that you could rescue from the apocalypse, or if there's like, if a genie came in and like let you trade 10 of your game for one other game. So like you kind of, like it confounds me as somebody who is not good at social media. Like I have a podcast, I'm a content creator, I'm a dice, I can't stand it. I can't stand Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. And like I'm jealous of you, my friend. I'm jealous that you seem to have kind of what to do in order to get the people talking to you.
I mean, it's a combination of certain things. We'll put a pin in the whole Solosaurus conversation, come back to that. We'll go on a tangent, just like Michael and I do on our show all the time.
You know what? Welcome home. Welcome home, my friend.
Right. The problem with me and Michael is we go on so many tangents and then we forget where we came from, so, but, so it all comes down to, it's about game design. So oddly enough, I am an amateur game designer. I have 2 games on Board Game Geek. Nobody's ever heard of them. They're print and play, free to play, whatever games. But although my game did get mentioned on SUSD one time, so I was very, very pleased about that.
Wow.
So like obviously one of the game design tenets is you want to give people interesting choices and tough choices, right? So, and being around like board game Facebook or media, after a while you get sick and tired of the same old conversation starters. What are your top 5 blah blah blah? What are your blah, blah, yeah? So
how much Honey Epic do you play? And
right.
I'm solo gaming. Suggest something. Oni party.
Yeah. So I to your point, right? Like whenever I post something, I want people's brains to get tickled, and I want to give them a little bit of something to chew on, make it a little crunchy for them. So that's kind of where that comes from. And then the other piece of it is in outside of board games, I'm somebody who makes a living with words and writing, and so that kind of makes its way into I write reviews and stuff like that. My dog speaks to me, and then I translate his thoughts into game reviews.
Your dog is a geek list, I think.
Yeah, my dog is over 20 reviews now on Board Game Geek. He's about to become a copper board game reviewer and get a micro badge. He's actually got more reviews and better reviews than I do on Board Game Geek. So my dog is more successful than I am, so that's fine.
That's how it goes. So, I did a review of a game called Prisma Arena. It was a Hub Games thing, and it got whatever reviews. And then like Cora from Dan and Cora is reviewing it, and it's like 7 times.
That's awesome.
It's the way it goes.
But yeah, to circle back around to the Solosaurus thing. So I was like blown away. I'm like, wow, I'm so honored. I'm still here as a fanboy of Solosaurus, and now you're asking me to, host the show, co-host the show. And oddly enough, Michael and I had known each other as fellow solo board gamers, and he and I had been talking about starting a podcast for like the longest time, and we had never gotten it together. So I presented the idea to him, and I'm like, hey, we're being given this golden opportunity to take over an existing thing with a listenership, and it's about solo board games. I mean, like, this couldn't be more perfect for you and me. And he said yes, and we tried to fit into our schedule. So that was in episode 66 that Brandon and I first transitioned. He and I co-reviewed Arkham Horror LCG, while Carter was becoming a new parent at the time. And then in episode 67, we all got together, all four of us, Brandon, Carter, Michael, and myself, and we reviewed Mage Knight. Mm-hmm. And, Brandon was like, this had to be, if we were going to go out, if the old incarnation of Solosaurus was going to go out, it had to go out on Mage Knight, right? Like the 800-pound gorilla of solo games. And so that's what we did. And then starting episode 68 onward, it's been me and Michael. And because the first episode of Solosaurus back in 2018 was called Getting Started, we thought that we would title our reboot episode Getting Restarted. And, just as an homage, of course, to Brandon and Carter. So we've recorded 4 or 5 episodes now, learning a lot about the whole process, right? That we've never done a podcast before.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So, but we're having a lot of fun. Fitting it in is interesting because we used to record on Saturday mornings starting at 9 a.m. for me. And now we record Sunday mornings, and I don't know where it's going to evolve, but yeah. And my wife has been extremely understanding about the whole thing, right. So that's super important, because it cuts, hats off to you, right? Because it really cuts into our time. And like, especially if you have young kids, like it's bananas. Right. So, but it's fun. It's really fun.
And like I found it, when I started, so I joined with Anthony Chatfield. Anthony Chatfield started a podcast called Table for One. And this was in 2016. He had a main podcast. It was like on hiatus, a lot of transition. So he just like started a solo podcast. In episode 5, he's like, hey, if anybody wants to call in and, be on an episode. So I called in and I was on an episode, Wrecking Oni Rim. And it just kind of like, I don't know, like his podcast kind of started up. And then I'm like, I can do this. So I just kind of like, and it occurred at a time in my life where there was a lot of transition. So like at the time I was living at my father-in-law's house. We had just moved to Connecticut from New York City, priced out like a lot of people just, can't afford it anymore, paying $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So then we were living at my father-in-law's house and like, there was just a lot of transition. My youngest was, I think 1 or 2 at the time. And I didn't know anybody. So I didn't have a game group. So the podcast became like my steadiness, right? Because I moved to a house and then I had another kid and then I changed jobs and I got a license. I'm a psychotherapist now. I got and like it was nice to have that every week.
Yeah.
Of regularity. Right.
Yeah.
Just like, and I had a system. I record 2 at a time. I have, if I had a guest come on, so like the secret, by the way, do 2 at a time so that you are ahead. I don't know. Well, you have to keep below 45 minutes, which you guys have not been successful at. But.
No, we keep trying. We're very conscious about that, but somebody keeps going off on tangents.
You have to keep them short. If you can't keep them short, then that's not going to work out. But I had a system of it, and I reached out to people, and I had this, and like it was just nice to have that like regularity. And then I finally got the house. Like I bought a house. I finally in the house that I bought, and my kids are getting a little bit older. That I'm not having anymore. And then I'm like, okay, well, then kind of like as things settled down, I kind of reevaluated, and then it's like, okay, COVID hit. And it's like, all right, well, the podcast is cool, but I want to do this, right? I want like to see people's faces. And we just did the top 200 commentary. So like we and the next one's coming out as we're recording this, coming out tomorrow. And there was a thread on BGG, like they saw my face and they saw Kevin Erskine's face and whoever else. And people started posting their own faces. And they're like, okay, this is what I look like. And this is what I look like. And I'm like, this is cool. I finally get to see And this is what I wanted to have you on there before, because your little meeple thing looks like something, but now I'm like, seeing the real you, and now I can kind of visualize it when you're talking on the podcast. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to make that transition. So pause the podcast for a while. I booted up YouTube, and now I'm kind of going a different direction. But yeah, I don't know how interesting this is to people, but like the hell with it. We're just talking.
I think it's great. I mean, like, for me, it's like, I think if we're like making a real human connection, I think that other real humans can connect with that as well.
Yeah, real humans come. Real humans, please. I'm dying for real humans. So, I mean, I guess like, so the question I want to ask before we get to Black Orchestra is like specific to Facebook, because you're such an active poster. I mean, I don't know how to ask this question, but like, do you notice like a difference this year? I mean, you've been around for a little while. Do you notice that like the conversations are different? Like, I think people are posting more, but they're also posting like, I'm too tired to play a game now, or or whatever, or something like that. So I wish I could play more games. I thought I was gonna have more games, but I'm so tired because of COVID, because of all this happening, or something. So like, I don't know, like, as an active person, like, what are you seeing in like the game community this year?
That's a really great question. And I mean, it kind of mirrors my own kind of evolution as I, joined, like online board game groups back in 2018, which is when I started. I got into board gaming in October 2017. It was Eldritch Horror was my gateway game. It was my son actually who, dragged me into it. And so there you go. It's still one of my favorite games. It's no longer in my top 5, but it's dropped out of my.
It's still in my top 10. I like Eldritch Horror because it's not Arkham. It's more like Indiana Jones.
Exactly. So it just reminds me of like playing Call of Cthulhu RPG back with my old college game group, and my favorites were where you're spanning the globe, and you're you're having encounters in Egypt, in Cairo, in whatever.
Museum. I don't want to be in a library. I want to go to Egypt. I want to go to the Himalayas. I want to go to Antarctica. I want to go to the sideboard. Like that. That's what Eldritch Horror gives me, and I'm good with that.
You know it.
And then Arkham, and then Arkham 3rd Edition. Have you played Arkham 3rd Edition?
I have. I like it too, but
it looks like a freaking spaceship because it's like circle, like corridor, circle. It's like, no, give me the world.
The world. I want the world map. That's funny. That's super funny.
Sorry. Really tangent. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
But yeah, so that's what got me involved, and it was the Dice Tower Facebook group that was actually the first group that I joined, because Dice Tower, name recognition, and then I kind of like started branching out from there, learning about other groups, et cetera, et cetera. And I think for this year, first of all, I will just make this blanket statement. I think that solo gamers in general are just more humble, and they're more vulnerable than like general board gamers or multiplayer gamers. There's a humility there, right? Like, because we spend a lot of time just on our own, right, and doing our thing. Mm-hmm. And also, it's also connected to, we tend to also share similar reasons for why we choose to solo. Right. And a lot of those reasons might necessarily, they might be connected to like mental health, or like, getting tired being with people, being introverted, and those types of things, right? And so,
like, having a disability, you can't like access your game group, or a life change. Like I can't, I had a baby, I can't leave the house. That's how I got into solo. I had a baby.
Right, exactly, right? Or folks who are, and they're retired now, and, they're kind of doing that, right? So, in general, that's why I'm kind of drawn to SBG, is because of that. And there's just generally nicer, the tenor of like, and less incidents of like, people posting, I think so-and-so is overrated, to ask, prove me wrong, or let's fight me, or whatever. And I'm like, that's not... I hate that stuff,
Meme. Get
the dude with the coffee cup. He's like,
coffee cup. Can you stop that, please?
I know, but it's more confrontational out there. I think. Right. I could be wrong. Fight me, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. This year, I think there's more of just people kind of like being vulnerable and saying, "Hey, I set up." and then I sat there, and then I read the rules, and then I just put it away, and that
Right.
feeling, kind of dissatisfied. And then when they post about that, people come in, they're like, yeah, I get you. Like, they just, there's more empathy going on there. You know what I mean?
Like,
so
they used to be, people would post that a lot, but it would always be about like Navajo wars or Feast for Odin. Like now they're posting it about Horrified.
I know.
Like I put this in it took me 2 minutes to set up, but I can't do it, guys. I can't do it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, some of those like more complex monsters in Horrified are like the scarab one. Oh man, yeah. So anyway, which is another like good point to call out. Like Horrified is an amazing mass market game, and like the Prospero Hall games, a lot of them are kind of stepping up their game. Like it used to be like you walk into the game section at Target, and you're like, just tumbleweeds, like there's nothing I'm interested in here, but now it's like, Barbie, I like that, I like that, I like that. I like that, I like that. There was Jaws of the Lion there a few months back, so
Jaws itself was a good game.
I have it here on the shelf. I tried to solo it. Turns out Act 2 was a lot easier to solo than Act 1. Act 1, so anyway, but yeah, so in general, I think that folks are showing their vulnerability more as the times are kind of tougher out there, and there's a little bit more acceptance of that. That's kind of like what I'm noticing. Yeah.
Awesome. And but they're still engaging. They're still engaging with your questions, and they're still engaging with. It's just a little bit more difficult, but it's a bump in the road, so to speak. But I think that people are still like the group is bigger than ever. Like I think that this thing is just going crazy.
Yeah, no, it's like 30, it's a 25, 30,000, I think. My numbers could be a little off, but not by much. There's a lot of people in SPG, which is kind of funny because it's getting better, but still outside, it's like, you still get the, why do you play solo games? Why not just play a video game? And you're like, here we go again, Right?
Do you have a go-to answer for that? Do you have a thing that you say?
Maybe just turn away, like not even bother to. I'm just kidding.
Soldier knows.
I kind of default to nowadays. It's like, well, a lot of people, find value in it. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. Like just be open. Just that would be my message. If there are primarily multiplayer gamers out there who are like listening to this, or it's like. There is a lot more under the heavens and on the earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And don't judge people too much for why they want to play solo. We have a whole spectrum of reasons, and I use the word spectrum intentionally, right? Like, so it just is very, very hard to judge folks for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My thing is, okay, so the whole board games are social thing, and to me is propaganda. I think the first board games were solo, and therefore people think board games are solo. As like, no, board games are a technology, and as a technology, they can do whatever you want them to do. I have a phone, right? And it used to be weird to play games on my phone. Do you remember? We're of an age, right? You remember like the little flip phones and the little LCD screen? You couldn't play games on that thing, and it was like ridiculous. But then the technology got better, the screen got bigger, and I could play games on it now. And it's like now it's like a big thing. So like the technology of board games got better, and like more able to like AI. Like board games have an AI now. There was no. You didn't have to used to have like a card deck that was like against you. You didn't have to have that. And then they kind of like Ranakitia and that invented that technology, and now it's like the solo technology in board games is like amazing. Like it's all over the place. And so it's like, let's not let our previous assumptions that we gathered like in the previous generation like infect what's going on now. That's kind of my approach to it.
For sure, yeah. And to your point about like solo AIs, and they have improved so much in just a short amount of time. And you've got folks like David Turcey, and you've got
that's exactly what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Morton Modrad Peterson, Automa Factory. Who else is working there? Daniel Villarreal, who just did the solo mode for Endless Winter, which is on Kickstarter now. Like these folks are like really, really figuring out, and not only like how can we make it more challenging, but also how can we make it more streamlined, right?
Yes.
Like want,
yes, please.
like we want something that doesn't take almost as much cognitive load as playing multi-handed to operate,
Right.
you know, and so those are some of the best experiences for me, especially me, because I'm famously very rules comprehension is an issue for me. So yeah,
I heard that
so
at the Getting a Restarted episode you did, my heart sang. I'm like, I have to have Martin, because you said you were a thematic gamer, and I'm like,
I am.
yes,
Yeah,
that's it, yeah. And like
I need.
us thematic gamers, we don't really jive with rules as written. We're not gonna like download a copy into our brains and then reproduce it. It's not happening.
No,
So it's a
and
much more chaotic process.
and furthermore, if you show me the game box and there's like a castle and a field, I'm already asleep. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Peter Goose's Castles of Burgundy. That's to you, man. That's to you.
I have very, very few like pure Euro games on my shelf. They have to have a heavy helping of themes. So like my favorite worker placement game is Eric Lang's Godfather Corleone's Empire,
Okay.
which is it's worker placement, but you get to do drive-by shootings in New York City and send the other family's thugs to sleep with the fishes in the East River. I'm like, hey, I'm there. That's
I'm in.
that's
You
it.
got me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so to me I need a lot of theme for my games for sure.
Speaking of theme, so this is you had put up the post. We put it. We began. Another reason why I wanted to reach out to you, talk to you. Let's talk about the game you just finished. Let's talk about Black Orchestra.
Yeah.
One of my I did review it like way back in the day. I've not played it since then. I just kind of thought about it. 3 years ago, I reviewed it under. It was like games. I forget what I called it. Games that raise issues, because it's Nazi Germany, and
Right.
it's the rise of Hitler, and there's a lot of possibly difficult engagement going on. But I feel like that game just does so well with the theme, honoring the theme, and all that kind of stuff. So let's get into it, man. Let's talk about
Sure.
Little Black Orchestra. So break it down for us.
Yeah, so what I said first about the game when I posted about it on SBG earlier to this morning, as a matter of fact, was I played it over the weekend, and then me and my buddy Sean were talking about it because he can't hang with the Nazi World War II theme, and he's a huge Star Wars fan, so he was like, could you possibly think about retheming it to Star Wars? And we're trying to kick around some Star Wars ideas about how to retheme it, blah, blah, blah. And that made me think, because usually I've rethemed about like a dozen games now, mostly to Star Wars. I have like three different Mandalorian rethemes. You know, I love the Mandalorian, by the way.
They did with Secret Hitler. Like the most popular retheme of Secret Hitler is Secret Sith Lord.
Secret Sith. Yeah, there's also a Harry Potter one, which is pretty popular. But the more so normally I wouldn't have a problem thinking of a retheme for any game, you know, even Aeon's End. I've got several retheme ideas for that. But the more I thought about like Black Orchestra, I'm like, I can't think of a theme that's going to improve, because this is one game that really the theme drives the mechanics, and the mechanics reinforce the theme. They're so well integrated that you couldn't swap, you know, like unlike say, I'm not going to mention the games, any name of games, but there's so many that are just the theme is obviously pasted on. There was one that I got really excited about recently. Again, I won't mention the name, but I fell in love with the theme.
I thought you were a viewer, man. I thought you no holds barred. Come on. Name
All right, fine. There is a Kickstarter now for a game called Shadow Network. Okay, I don't know if you've heard of it, and it is a worker placement midweight, and it is in the 1960s Cold War, which I'm a sucker for that theme. I love that, and the art is gorgeous. And I'm like, I'm all over it. I'm going to back it all in day one. And then I took a look at it. I took a closer look at the game mechanisms, and I got disappointed because it's like, turns out it just seems like a Euro worker placement game with slight tweaks, but doesn't really bring anything new to the gameplay. And it just seemed to me like the theme was pasted on. And at that point, I'm like, I'm out, you know, and that sucks. It sucks because I felt that they could have done so much more. There aren't enough games with that theme, which, by the way, Pandemic Legacy Season 0 is that theme. And I'm so excited about that, you know? But yeah, so So going back to Black Orchestra, right? The theme and the mechanisms are so well integrated. And then speaking of,
I mean, it's a wonderful player cooperative game,
Mhm.
and it is that pandemic style where like you're doing pawns and you go from zone to zone trying to do
Yeah,
stuff. Only instead of like curing diseases, you're trying to kill Hitler, and
right.
Hitler is I think he's a piece, right? Isn't he a piece?
Yes. So there are these rectangular tokens, and they have the
Right,
names on them. Hitler and his 5 deputies, right?
right.
And
Goebbels and
Himmler and
Himmler. Yep.
Bormann and all those folks.
And
And
they are actual pieces on the board, walking around, like doing thematic stuff. So like kind of reenacting things, and like they're visiting here, and
yeah,
like you go through the different rounds, and they're going around, and on your end, the player end, you're playing like revolutionaries, who I don't know if they knew each other, but they were in the resistance, right?
yeah. So you're playing either you're a member of the German military, the Wehrmacht, or you're a member of the Abwehr, which is kind of like their CIA, or
Right.
you're a civilian. And these are all based on actual historical figures, right? And all their stories are right on the player board.
Right.
And so basically, you're trying to grab items, and you're trying to get cards that are trying to increase your motivation while managing your suspicion level, because the Gestapo is onto you and they know that you're plotting to try to assassinate Hitler. And so as Hitler and his deputies are moving around, and it's all powered by an events deck with 7 stages, right? And the events are, again, based on historical things, and then this happened, and then the effect of it is Hitler's military support increases by this much, and they move over here, which if you're trying to, like, if you already have a plot in place and you're like, okay, Hitler's there, that's where we're going to hit him. And then the event card comes out and says, oh, Hitler leaves there and he was there. And you're like, it's like, and that's kind of like a lot of the game for you is like,
Right.
you're trying to decide when is going to be the right moment to try to, use this plot. And there's different plot cards. Like you could try to bomb his plane. You could try to derail his train. You could try to set a sniper in place. You could try to a coup d'etat, those types of things. So it's all super, super thematic, right? And it just like really immerses you in that world, in the 1940s, World War II, you're in Berlin, you're in Western Europe, and yeah, it's just, it's like getting lost in a good TV show for a couple of hours. So yeah, that's great. And then the other thing related to me and not doing well with rules is the turns. The turn sequence is printed right on the game board, and then here's what you do if you're in prison, and here's how you resolve plots. It's all right in front of you, which means once you got the hang of it, you never have to pick up the rule book again, which I love. And why aren't more game publishers and designers doing that for us solo gamers? So really easy, straightforward rules, very, very clear turn sequence, and highly thematic. So I've had it for at least a year and a half now, and I still hits my table, and it's not that heavy. Like BGG complexity rating is about 2.5, so it's about the same as Clank, or a little bit slightly heavier than Clank. So I think and it's very easy to teach because it's a co-op, and just keep on going. And then if like your person you're teaching loses their way, just show them on the game board and they can pick it up. So excuse me. It's great.
So the big problem that people have with Black Orchestra, once they get past the theme, is the dice rolling and the dice resolution, because it really is kind of an all or nothing deal where we're used to in our solo games. We're used to like, you roll and then you twist and you mitigate, you spend this token, you raise this by one. So like there's always these like tools, right? So when you get to Black Orchestra, and there's like, it's not like totally up to the fates, it's not Yahtzee, but
it's not Yahtzee.
You can fail.
Yes.
And you can fail big time. Like if you don't hit, like if you plan on hitting Hitler, and like you said before, like, your Hitler's there, and let's say the event deck didn't take him away, he's right there. You're going to play your plot, and then you're going to like go for it. And then it's like, oh no, I have to play for like 40 minutes to set this up again. Seems a little, anti modern game designy.
It is, but it isn't, right? So I argue about this about in my piece on Solo Board Gamers. I'm like, is there randomness in this game? Absolutely. And normally, like most modern gamers are like, oh, randomness, oh, bad, right? But I think what's interesting about the designers of this game is that they embrace the randomness and they made it a core piece of the gameplay, right? So
They just went for it.
you
They're
are
like, okay.
yeah. Well, you already know that you're going to roll X amount of dice for this plot. But if Hitler's military support is too high, you can't do it. If it's, and so in a sense, the mitigation is up to you. You have to decide when the stars align and it's like, okay, this is the right time, the right place, and I have just enough dice. And then sometimes you get cards in your hand that allow you to potentially re-roll one die or something like that. So there is some modern board game mitigation, but it also has that element of you could just fail. You could, and that's exactly what was happening in our last game. We had like multiple plots to assassinate Hitler that we tried, and they all of them failed by one. Every one of them, and we were like so frustrated. It was like and we lost, right?
And it's funny because it's like, it extends the gameplay. Like you either can end the game or you're going to play for another 20, 30 minutes to set it up. And we're not used to that. Like we're used to games last so long. Like you either let you play until you win or you play until the game, until the timer, whatever timer the game, especially in a co-op game, usually the timer is like, a deck, like, and it kind of runs out or a set number of turns. Here it's like, well, here's another 20, not 20, but like, here's another bunch of turns.
Yeah. Although you do have, so like I said, the events deck is divided into seven stages, right? And when you get to deck number 7, there's one card that's shuffled in there, and you don't know when it's going to come out. But that one card is called Documents Found, and basically the Gestapo has discovered your plot, and you're thrown in prison and executed. Like done. And so you're in the back of your mind, you're like, we can't take too long on this because we're going to get to stage 7 and that card's going to come out, and which is exactly how my last game ended. That was after like 6 failed plots. The ultimate insult was, and by the way, the Gestapo arrests you, which again, a lot of people are like, screw this game. I played for 3 hours, and then because of one card, I lose. And a lot of people will get pissed off by that. But that's the nature of the game, right? Like if you're not okay with that, then don't buy it.
I used to be really like, because you go through phases with this stuff, right? Like, so I played, the silly games, right? And then I got into real board games, the pandemics and and got blown away. And I got really into like, really tight mechanisms. And I got really into like, the not randomness and the lots of mitigation. And I'm like, okay, this game has too much randomness, therefore it's not good. But then I think I've kind of evolved again. What the son choose to forget, the grandchildren choose to remember type thing. So like I finally got back to like embracing. So like, Arkham Horror Second Edition, another example of like a game that's just a giant mess of rolling.
Right.
And when I first played it, I spent there 5 hours. I hated everything. But then now I'm like back into it because like games that and again, like this is a thematic thing. It's like games that are too tight, it's almost like they squeeze the theme out. And like games that have like that randomness factor kind of open up the excitement. And it's in the excitement that you can get really thematic, emotionally attached moments. And if you put that safety net there, then like, kind of putting huggies on the experience, so to speak, and I get it. You want to avoid unhappiness, but like you've also kind of like limited the happiness. Like I'd rather have an open system nowadays, and not for every game, but like I think Black Orchestra is a perfect example of something where I want to like hoot and holler when I beat Hitler, and if I so funny to say, and if I like strategize my way to it, it's a different kind of exciting.
No, I absolutely 100% agree. Like if the theme is immersive and exciting enough, I am willing to forgive a certain level of randomness. So I agree with you 100%, right? We're fellow thematic gamers.
Yes.
after other people, they might like, oh no way, you know, like I want to be able to predict everything that happens, and I will score exactly 48 victory points. You know, so.
or like they want their choices. That's what they'll say. They'll say they want their choices to matter. And in a game like Black Orchestra, the dice will take away their choice. That's what they kind of they think.
Yeah, but again, that's exactly how it was for these plotters. They were not in control of every aspect, right? So it's like, but this is why I come back to why I said earlier, it's like they embraced the randomness and they made it a piece of the core gameplay in service of the theme. And I think it totally works in this game, which is not to say like, you know, I'm a modern board gamer like you. Like there are just some games where it's like that randomness is just so annoying. Right. So did you use randomness in an intelligent way, or did you use randomness in a frustrating way? And I'm not down with a frustrating way, but I am down with people who, you know, aren't afraid of dice and figure out creative ways to use it intelligently. So yeah.
So I mean, Black Orchestra, you know, revisiting Black Orchestra, it's a home run, you know. And I've definitely gone back to some of the games that I kind of poo-pooed at the time as a newer reviewer. Like, you know, my first and second year, like I'll kind of go back and think of, well, how did I think of that game? It's like, oh, that changed a lot. And Black Orchestra is definitely one of those.
Yeah, for sure. I like it, and it's a 2016 release, I want to say. Yeah, but it's for me, at least personally, it's not in my top 10, but it's probably in my top 15. I don't know if you're the same way, but I have this like sick habit of going to Pub Meeple, to the ranking engine, and every so often just like importing my entire 300 game collection, and then having just like spending, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, just having them fight it out, and then downloading the results into a spreadsheet. And like, this is my, you know, like my ranking for this quarter. I do it roughly 4 times a year. So yeah, I'm actually pretty in touch with what's in my top 10, and it's kind of disturbing actually.
I have a geek list of every cooperative. I'm a big co-op fan. I have a geek list of every cooperative game I've played. And it's up to about 210.
Wow.
Of like rank. Like when you probably played as many. You probably, if you really think about it, like you've probably thrown as many on there.
Maybe. I don't know.
Something like that. And so like the ranking is kind of static. Like every once in a while, like one will kind of like bump up and down everything. But like for the most part, like, I mean, Spirit Island, Mage Knight, Pandemic. Oh my God, Pandemic's always my favorite game. Like they kind of like they're really hard to dethrone. Like they're really, and then we play like, you know, in other places, but they're the top ones, man. They don't change.
They don't change. Yeah, I'm. People don't like me very much because I don't fall into. I'm not a fan of Mage Knight, and I do own.
On the podcast, just go to the video just for that. I'll timestamp it.
I'm not a fan of Mage Knight. Sorry, you know. Okay, so I will say this. I am a unabashed medium weight gamer. Like that's like 3.5. That's where my sweet spot is, and complexity. And Mage Knight is like sits at a 4.3. And I've always been the same. Even like outside of games, like when I was like, let's say I was trying to build a computer or whatever. If it gets to a certain level of complexity, I start to get this like anxious feeling in the pit of my stomach, like what if I can't put it back together again? What if I screw up? What if I, you know? And so it's just like it's all wrapped up in my own personal kind of neurosis. So yeah, Mage Knight is just, it's outside of my zone of comfort for complexity, and so therefore I no longer have fun. And I realize that for a lot of solo board gamers, especially solo board gamers, where you have pretty much all the time in the world. And some people have the luxury of keeping it set up long term and just playing a few turns at a time and then going away and coming back. They love the complexity, they revel in it, and I'm just like, yeah, that's not me. You know, I can't force myself. I will also say that I do own Spirit Island. I played with one spirit, to just training wheels, man, and. The idea of like, there's one guy on SBG, he's like, I played 6 spirits at the same time, and I'm like, how's your brain? You know,
Unbelievable.
But yeah, so I'm not really that down with Spirit Island either. Sorry.
The number 1 and 2 game by like a billion years, respectively.
I know. And I totally respect people who love these games, and I understand why people love these games. It's just, it's not for me. I can't. Sure. Yeah, I got to be true to myself. My number ones are Aeon's End has been my number 1 for like a long time. Mm-hmm. I love deck builders. I have to say that. People are like, oh, I'm so sick of the deck building mechanic. I'm like, no, I'm not. So Legendary Encounters, I, love the X-Files. It's connected to my, old school love of the X-Files, a TV show. I love Australia, which is a Martin Wallace game from, I know.
Podcast listeners, but the face is not impressed.
It's one of my favorites.
It's okay.
I got to say.
It's too mechanical for me.
I hear you. I totally understand that. To me, there is a comfort in a very, very kind of like set turn sequence. Once there are too many exceptions. So famously, Arkham Horror LCG. I really wanted to love that game when I first tried it because, again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm an old school Chaosium Call of Cthulhu RPGer, and when I heard like the pitch for it, it's like, oh, just a deck of cards, and it's basically going to give you an RPG experience without a game master, just like on your own with the cards. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. And then when I actually got it at the table, the core box, and then I tried like 4 or 5 different times to just restart because it was the ambiguity that was destroying me. I would just have to stop playing, and I'm like, I don't know exactly how to proceed here. And within these 3 rule books that are with it, I can't find the answer to my question. And there are people who can just get past that ambiguity, and they're like, I'll just figure it out, whatever. I couldn't, you know what I mean? The funny thing was, so I got rid of it famously, and then I tried Marvel Champions like many moons down the road, and I enjoyed that. Yeah. And it was the experience of getting used to Marvel Champions that kind of leveled me up to the point where I'm like, oh, now I can wrap my hand around Arkham Horror LCG. So I'm working my way up to the really, really complex games, but I think 3.5 complexity is my current limit of where I'm comfortable.
To me, like a game has to be like thematic. Like it has to, like the theme has to kind of rise with the complexity in order for me to be into it. Like once you get that complexity kind of like arcs up, and then like the theme is just, that you get it's more and more pasted on. So you get like an arc, right? Or Peace for Odin. I am not convinced that Vikings put their loot away in like polyomino shapes and like little huts over here. I'm not going to do it for me. But like a game like Through the Ages, I find is very, it's complex, or like Spirit Island, I find I can see the Dejan, something.
The Dohan,
little guys.
The
little guys, you're defending them, you're backing them up as they're, defending against I can see that. So that helps me.
Nice.
No, I mean, so that is, that we covered a lot of ground over there, my friend. Wow.
Through the Ages, I play it on the iPad, and that's how I have fun with it. Also because you actually meet Vlada in the tutorial, and he's funny. So that's one of the things that I enjoy about them.
Vlada is like a little bit of what do I want to say, like a curmudgeon.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, so thematic games are my jam. Mid-weight thematic games.
Mm-hmm. I really hope that we get a chance to talk about some more going down the road. I see Professor Evil in the Citadel of Time behind you. That's one of my sneaky favorites. I do love that one. I'm actually playing it.
That one?
Yep, that's the one right over there.
Yeah.
I'm actually, by the time this video releases, I will have played it on an Extra Life stream. Just because I want to. And this new stuff is gonna maybe we'll talk about Pandemic Legacy Zero. Do you have a group for it?
No, I don't. In fact, I have. I just bought a Pandemic. You can't see it in the season 1. It's still in shrink, and I just introduced it to my son and daughter, and they're excited and they want to try it, and I'm like, okay, let's start a game together and let's see if we can keep it going, because it's organized in months, right? Like I've never played the Pandemic Legacy game, so I would hate to have to solo it because I hear it's much, much better if you share the experience with others. So
I mean,
yeah.
yes and no. Like, it's like a novel, right? And you
Hmm.
can enjoy like a popcorn novel on your own. Like, you don't have to have, like, obviously you want that pop experience, like, the big surprises, what's in the box, and like, sharing that. But I don't know, like I not that I soloed it, but like I can see that. I can at least
Hmm.
see, like, if you can't get your group together, which is how people play Gloomhaven. Like the Gloomhaven groups fell apart after 4 or 5 games. It's like I have this giant box with a whole bunch of unopened little boxes. I'm soloing this bad boy. And
Hmm.
you can go through it. So like, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily exclude it.
Hmm.
If you're into it, like if you get to a couple of months and you're like really into, you want to find out what happens and
Hmm.
explore the game.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm super excited about Pandemic Legacy Season 0 because, like I said, I am a complete sucker for that kind of Cold War. I bought Twilight Struggle because
Right.
that's what that is, but I don't have anybody to play with. So, and there is like a fan made solo mode for it on BGG, but it's like
It's a flow chart.
30 pages.
It's a
It's
flow chart.
gigantic.
It's like a military war game flow chart.
I can't do it. I'm not ready for that. That's the other thing that, going back to Michael and Solosaurus, he's a hardcore war gamer from
Right.
way back. And so that's kind of like one of the tensions that we have on our show is he's constantly trying to yank me into the solo game. Martin, try this solo game, this war game. He wants to pull me over there, and I'm not ready to go. And so, and I'm trying to like slowly like turn him into a more thematic
Right.
gamer. So that's kind of like how that's our odd couple shtick that's going on there a little bit.
So you guys are Solosaurus. That is
Hmm.
a not quite weekly, but just like whenever you got, it
It's
comes out
it's
once in a
it's
while.
It's actually always been a bi-weekly show,
Right.
and
Okay.
a new episode will always drop Friday, every second Friday at midnight,
Mm.
is midnight Eastern. So we're still maintaining the same schedule that Brandon and Carter started back in 2018. Yeah,
Mhm.
and of course Brandon and Carter were very, very good about sticking each episode to about 45 minutes, and so far we've been averaging double that for
Well,
every
they were
episode.
very like, okay, let's get to the game, and they very kind of concentrated on, okay, like we're gonna break this thing down. You guys are off the cuff a little bit better, which is
Oh my gosh. Well, it's like, okay, when they would do the news section, so, Solosaurus, like, always starts off before the review to the news, and they would just get through, like, it's a
Mhm.
newscast. But when Michael and I do the news, it's like, Martin, what do you know about this game? Oh my gosh, I just love this. I love it.
I gotta go check the Kickstarter right now. I'm checking this out. Do you see this?
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much, man. This has been such a great pleasure.
Yeah.
I know you guys in the video, you're going to comment on there. It's like, oh, you stifled a couple yawns there. Yes, it's almost 11 o'clock. I'm a dad that I'm about to go to bed. But no, this was super fun. I absolutely,
Likewise.
whenever, because Michael was messaged us during the cast, he just lost the thread, like, family and work and all that kind of thing. But I would love to have you guys on down the road. Or maybe I can hop on your show. We could do a combined thing, but
Likewise.
anytime.
Yeah. Would love it. Yeah.
Anytime.
Thank you so much.
No, this is awesome. So Solosaurus, bi-weekly podcast. Martin and Michael have picked up the baton. Yeah. So I mean, is there anything? And solo board gamers, SPG, and the different Facebook groups. You can always catch up with Martin over there.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun and a pleasure, and thank you for staying up.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that shelf story. This is Jason reminding you, if you can change your mind, you can change the world. So until next time, later, everybody.